Hello, welcome to my recap of game 7 of the match. In previous game, game 6, Magnus won after an 8-hour battle and currently he's leading in the match. In the game 7, Jan didn't change anything from previous games, games 1, 3 and 5. He played e4. And also, Magnus doesn't change anything, he plays e5 and they play Ruy Lopez. The same variation that was in games 1, 3 and 5. Here bishop e7, rook e1, b5, and after bishop b3, castles. As you know, in game 1, white played h3, and in games 3 and 5, Jan played a4, and he repeats this in game 7 as well. In game 3, Magnus played bishop b7, but in game 5 he played rook b8, so he repeated from game 5 and he played rook b8. Now Jan took on b5, ab, and h3. After c3 here, black has an option of going d5. And here we would have a game from this year between Jan Krzysztof Duda and Magnus Carlsen, after which white took on e5, and after c6 we have some kind of marshal, but with ab included, and that's a very complex position. But Jan chose to just avoid this and play h3, d6, and now d3. Like in the previous game, the worst piece in black's position is his knight on c6. Now black plays h6, knight c3. Now he wants to get to d5, and black plays rook e8 here, trying to get his bishop to f8 and get the knight to a better square on e7 and g6. Now knight d5, and here it's not a good time for exchange, because after bishop d5 or e d5, this knight would be very awkward. It would have to go to b4, and after bishop b3, maybe to find some other way, some other route, like go to a6 and c5 and get to e6, but it's taking lots of time to reach to an optimal square. So here, first he goes bishop f8. He doesn't hurry because of h6. There's no bishop g5, so there's no hurry to exchange this knight. And now Jan took on f6. I think this is pretty ambitionless from him. I think he was just trying to recover from game 6 because it was 8 hours long, and I think he wanted to have an easy game. He wanted to recuperate and survive the next day with black, and after the rest day to try to strike. Actually, this is a novelty, knight f6. Before it was played c3, but even that is not very dangerous for black. Bishop e6 would be played. If white doesn't do anything, just bishop d5, knight e7, and black is very solid. For example, if bishop e3, then takes ed, knight e7, and on c4, I think black can just arrange pieces like g6, bishop g7, and even though he lacks a bishop pair, I think black has a good potential on the king side. But instead, Jan was just exchanging knights. Queen takes, and he went for c3. He was trying to stop knight d4 maybe, and also to go for a push d4. Now Magnus regroups his pieces. He gets his knight to e7, and he will get it to g6, where it's better placed. It will target f4 and h4, which is a much more promising situation for black. Now bishop e3 by Jan, because some entries on the a file don't offer too much. Rook a7, for example, would just lead to probably just rook b7 or bishop b7, just rook b7, and I think there is not enough play. So here he plays bishop e3, bishop e6, and now d4 by Jan, which is very committal because now lots of exchanges occur on the board, but maybe that's what he was hoping for, to make this position as simple as possible. Magnus now took on d4, cd4, and now he took on b3, queen b3, and knight g6. He targets the e4 pawn, and now Jan goes for counterattack on c7. If he tried something like queen c2 here, then black would have c5, and we would have something similar to the game. If he took, he would take back, and after bishop c5, knight f4 with the idea of knight h3 next, which is a very annoying threat. And in case of d5, now black would have a perfect Benoni. After knight e5, takes, next would be g5, bishop g7, and black would be in control here. Instead he went for rook ec1. Magnus doesn't want to capture on e4 because when white takes on c7, he might slightly put pressure on black's pawns on the queen side, with rook a5 and so on and so on. So he chose not to take immediately, he chose to play c5 instead. And the point is, if white takes on c5, dc, bishop c5, now black has knight f4, with this threat of knight e2. And how does white answer that? If queen c2, there's always possibility of knight h3, or just bishop c5 and knight e2. If bishop f8, again knight e2. If king h2, then you can at least take on e4 and have a very good position. Jan plays e5 instead. And now the point is, if black takes on e5 like this, to capture on c5 and to have a c-passed pawn, but Magnus chose not to do that. He just went for queen f5. And now if he takes on d6, now black has a nice intermezzo with c4. And on queen b4 to go queen d5. And eventually he would capture on d6, which would lead to a very nice position. Instead he took on c5, black takes, and now bishop c5, because if he doesn't take, black will push c4, and then e5 pawn will be very vulnerable. It will not be possible for white to defend the pawn. So he just took on c5, bishop c5, rook c5, and now knight e5. Black is not worried about any pin because the knight will get taken with check, and if king goes to h1, you can just go queen f4 as black, and there is no pin, and it's also equal position. So here Nepo just chose to equalize with knight e5, because knight e4 would be good because it targets the queen and the pawn on b5, but unfortunately for white, black has this tactical shot, knight f3, and white is losing the rook on c5. White is more or less forced to exchange knights with knight e5, rook e5, and they exchange now queens. Now Nepo goes for queen c3, even further exchanging. Now Magnus said, why not? I'm leading in the match, why wouldn't I just simplify the position? And he goes for rook c8, rook a5, and we have this very dull endgame, 3 versus 3 with rooks on the board. And after a couple of more moves, I think they just went for move 40, so they can offer a draw. And after several moves, they just finished it. And after a long game 6, they had this pretty non-stressful game, which allowed them to get some energy back. I hope that we get a very nice game 8 tomorrow. The result in the match is 4 versus 3 for Magnus. We are halfway done. I expect more exciting games. Thank you so much for watching, for listening this and watching, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.